So I finally got around to watching Tales of the Walking Dead. It was alright, I guess. Didn't really leave a lasting impression on me, but I do think that the idea of the show is really cool, showing us different pockets of the universe from all different times, the backstory of Alpha, and I really think that the show has a lot of potential. So for a little while, I've been thinking of my own ideas for this show, episodes that would be cool, that couldn't have been done otherwise, some non-canon stuff just for the sake of it, because the regular show and the other spin-offs couldn't do it because it would take away from the story it's telling. Tales offers fans of The Walking Dead a way to explore the universe differently. And while this first season mostly centered on characters we don't know, all of my ideas more or less center on characters that we do know. But my ideas, as you'll soon find out, aren't necessarily canon, or at least they don't have to be in some cases. So in today's video, I've got 6 ideas for episodes that a hypothetical season 2 or onwards could give us. So grab a seat and try to imagine yourself in a world where all these episodes are premiering on TV, because I doubt any of this stuff will ever actually happen. But here's my ideas for Tales of the Walking Dead. So my first idea actually comes from a joke that I said in one of my videos. I talked about how there's so many spin-offs, the next thing we're gonna get is Dog the spin-off. But I've gotten so many comments about that joke that it got me thinking about what a spin-off about Dog would really be about. I don't think there's enough content for an entire show, sadly, but an episode of Tales could be really interesting. Now hear me out on this one, or if you think that this is already stupid, just go to the next one, but we know all about where Dog himself came from. He was originally with Leah, but where did Leah get him? This was years into the apocalypse, and when Daryl finds Dog, he's a puppy, so how did Leah stumble across a puppy? Were there other puppies? What about the mother? Now, what you need to understand about Dog is that he's a German Shepherd. These are some of the smartest dogs in the world. They're used by police, and they're very capable dogs. They're very smart, so to see a German Shepherd mother on her own in the apocalypse trying to find a safe place to give birth to her babies could already be a unique hour of television. The beginning of the episode could focus on Dog's mother. As the apocalypse starts, maybe the family that owns the dog is infected and forces the dog out into the woods to be on her own. As more time passes, the mother looks for a place to give birth to her puppies, and when she does, her and her puppies are captured by some group of survivors. They could be running low on food and turn to eating the dogs, but not all of them. Dark story so far, I know, but hang in there. The mother somehow gets out and rescues her last puppy, maybe getting shot or something and only being able to bring the pup so far from the group of survivors before leaving it on its own. Then this last puppy could be Dog, wandering around on his own before meeting Leah and ultimately Daryl. It would be a tragic story for sure, but it would also be unique to everything we've seen before. And this group of survivors doesn't even necessarily have to be bad people. We've seen our group of survivors eat dogs to survive, so maybe it's just genuinely a good group of people doing what they need to survive. And maybe they have a kid who lets the puppy go or something like that. A lot of different possibilities and ultimately a pretty simple story. Let me know your thoughts on this one and all the ones to come in the comments below. So this next one is something I've thought about for a long time since I made my unanswered questions video, and that's Georgie. We saw Georgie in only one episode of the show. Season 8, Episode 12, The Key, yet she has this huge off-screen presence with Maggie leaving to go and work with her and find new communities, and we hear about this in Season 11 when Maggie comes back with a whole bunch of new friends. I think there's a lot to explore during this time that Maggie was with Georgie. Maggie herself says that they did a lot to help out other communities, but that eventually everything fell apart. And now she doesn't even know if Georgie is alive because she left to go out west while Maggie stayed behind. An episode solely focused on Georgie and Maggie going around helping different communities could be really cool. We could see what they did and also how they eventually split apart. If they wanted to end the episode right there, that could be fine, or they could make that like half the episode and then dedicate the rest of it to what happened to Georgie. Maybe she met some other communities when she went out west, or maybe even some characters from Fear if she went to Texas. Or maybe she does get too in over her head with a community and they kill her. Or maybe she finds the biggest community she could ever find, the CRM. I don't know why, but I feel like Georgie could be like a really big key player in the CRM. She just gives me those kind of vibes. This episode could be canon to the story depending on what happens, and I think it would be nice to see more of this time period. An episode like this also gives opportunity to explore the world of The Walking Dead, which is kind of the point of Tales to begin with. This episode could also be solely about Georgie and her backstory and not have Maggie involved in any way. I think anything involving Georgie would be cool, and it would give some closure to the character that was mentioned more times than she was even on screen. And according to Google, there's a lot of different people named Georgie, and they all look very similar.
Coincidence? I think not!
So for this next one, I have to be very specific in what I mean, but I think seeing an attack on Alexandria during the time of the 6-year time jump would be really great. But it comes with a twist. This attack would happen in real time. What I mean by that is that 1 minute of on-screen time is 1 minute in their time as well. There's some really great episodes of TV that use this mechanic. It's often accompanied by like a one-take tracking shot, or at least seemingly one take. Some of the examples that come to mind are the episodes Ronnie Lily from the 2nd season of Barry, and The Storm from The Haunting of Hill House. So why do I think this would be a good episode? We've seen attacks on Alexandria before, why is this one any different? For one, there's so much that could have happened in the 6 years from when Rick leaves to where we pick up in the show. We see some flashbacks here and there, like when Michonne is pregnant and Daryl's out in the woods on his own, but a large part of this time is really unknown. Were there really not any other notable dangers or anything like that during these 6 years? So an episode in real time, it's a gimmick. Why use it for an episode of The Walking Dead? Because I think an episode like this could show us how brutal and dangerous walkers really are. Over the years, walkers became more of just an obstacle or a nuisance rather than a real threat. An episode like this could show us walkers like they were in the earlier seasons and what they really are: monsters. So you start the episode off on a character waking up, going through their daily routine, and then going outside. Now this character could be a random Alexandria resident, or it could be a notable character like Michonne, Gabriel, Eugene, somebody who was there at this time. The first few minutes of the episode could show us a day that everything seems to be going fine. They say hello to the neighbors, maybe help out with some chores around the community, and have some conversations when a group of walkers approaches outside the gates. It's not really anything a single person can't handle, so they don't think too much about it. But this person gets surrounded because there's more walkers than they thought, and they left the gate open. Now we see our characters scramble to not only get their weapons, but to try and get everybody to safety. They shut the gates, start clearing out walkers, but then one of the walls falls down on the other side of Alexandria. Characters are splitting up, getting nervous because they don't know where everybody is, who's safe, who's bitten, and it could just be pure chaos until the end of the episode where everybody is found and life just kind of resumes like it was in the beginning of the episode. An episode like this would highlight the threat of the walkers, but having things go back to normal like they were at the beginning of the episode would show us that this is just what the world is now. This is what these characters go through sometimes on a daily basis, and they overcome it because that's what they have to do. This is their life. Not only do I think this would be a cool episode, but it would give us the opportunity to see a lot of the characters that don't have spin-off shows return to screen again. They could fully lean into the style of filmmaking and film it like it was a single take, and this hour of the day is complete chaos until everything returns to normal. Almost as if like the cameras weren't even there. And I actually think if it were to center on a random Alexandria resident, then the episode could be even cooler. Maybe this random person isn't a complete badass like our characters, they have survival skills, can take out a walker, but if 3 walkers are coming at them at once, then they'd be overwhelmed. And having it be one take in real time would be really scary for the audience to see, because there's not just a bunch of quick cuts of Michonne slicing heads off, you'd see walkers running at you in real time and how somebody would try to handle that situation. Maybe I'm not explaining this super well and the pictures aren't helping, but I think an episode like this would be really cool. So here's a big one, and it's one that a lot of people have been asking for a very long time, and that's Clementine, the main character for the Telltale Walking Dead series, and a fan favorite that fans have wanted to see adapted to screen for years. Now, there's a lot of weight when it comes to this episode. How can you fit the entire story of Telltale's Walking Dead series into a single episode? Well, you don't, obviously, but I think this episode could very easily be like a test run to see if the audience is interested. When they inevitably are, then this could easily be its own spin-off series. So the question for this episode is, when? Clementine's story spans years. Do you start at the beginning or show a more grown-up Clementine so that way the show could take place in the current timeline and then have her eventually meet up with our characters from the proper show? My honest answer is, I'm not too sure because I'm still very early in my playthrough of Season 1 of the game.
You what?
I know, I make Walking Dead videos and I haven't played through the entire series multiple times, but I have big plans for this series on my channel and I want to make sure the content is going to be great, so I've been avoiding it for the time being. But I'm not blind to how successful and how loved these stories are. But delving into this territory is pretty tricky, especially for an episode of Tales of the Walking Dead. The first season of this game revolves around the relationship of a man taking care of a young girl who's not his daughter, and there was this small TV show that came out pretty recently with the exact same premise. So adapting this story now to a new audience, not fans of the game, could be seen and would be seen as trying to capitalize on the success of The Last of Us. Now, I hear you, okay? I really do. Telltale's Walking Dead predates The Last of Us, but most people don't know that. You do, because you're watching this video and you might have already known it, but adapting the story of Season 1 and an episode of Tales, or even a TV show of its own, would be seen as copying The Last of Us. It's not right, but that's just how it is. So for an episode of Tales, not a hypothetical spin-off, I think that seeing a grown-up Clementine going through her own journey could make for a really great episode. They could adapt a story from the game, maybe mix a few together. What those stories are, I'm not sure because I'm not there yet, but this episode could act as a proof of concept for a series of its own. And depending on what story they go with in this episode, it could be considered canon or non-canon. If they adapt a few different stories in one episode, but then want to tell them again for real in the actual show, then this could be non-canon. Or if they just want to carry on with the actress they get to play Clementine, and then have her join in on one of the upcoming spin-offs, then this episode could be canon. This is all assuming that the 4 spin-offs are in some way going to connect together, which might not even be the case. It would be if I was in charge, but I'm not, for some reason. But the point is that this episode has a lot of potential. It's no secret that over the years, The Walking Dead has declined. I know it, you know it, even the people in charge know it, so it's kind of Hail Mary time for The Walking Dead. They're already doing that by focusing shows on characters that people like, but a move like introducing Clementine could reignite that spark that's been missing for so many people for so many years. I know tons of people who are fans of the Telltale game but haven't watched the show either ever or in a long time. And a move like this could bring in all of those fans and maybe even some new ones. This is very tricky territory for a lot of different reasons, but if it's done right, then this could be the big break that's needed in this universe right now. So this next one is also pretty big, and I think in a lot of ways needs to happen, and that's Old Man Carl. This episode would of course be non-canon due to the fact that Carl is, dead, but the wasted potential of the character is something that needs closure, and an episode about Old Man Carl could be exactly what this character needs. I think of this episode in the same vein as the movie Logan. That movie is very disconnected from the X-Men franchise, and that's a good thing. This episode should be very disconnected from the rest of this universe too. This is years later, Carl is now older than Rick was in the show, so everybody he's ever known or cared for has died. This could be a timeline like the comics, where Judith actually died during the governor's attack on the prison, or maybe the only other person alive with Carl is Sophia, and she never got lost in the woods and walked out of that barn. I found this picture, the one that I used in the thumbnail, and it really gave me a lot of inspiration for this episode. I imagine Carl and maybe Sophia living in a cabin in the woods, tired and weary from their journeys and their lost loved ones, and they have all these different mementos from the people they've lost hung up on their walls or in the weapons they use. The story of this episode could go in so many different directions. This could be the darkest episode of any Walking Dead series with the amount of people they've lost, or it could be a semi-hopeful episode with Carl and Sophia living out their final days together in peace. Or maybe Carl is just a wandering man now, easily taking out any group of foes that he comes across like he's John Wick. He could be this kind of like urban legend around some local community, the man wearing the cowboy hat. He comes around at night and saves you like he's this guardian angel, but nobody knows if he's real or not. There's so many different avenues to explore, but I really do think that it's needed. I can see this going one of two ways. They pay a really great high-profile actor to play an older Carl. I've been showing pictures of Josh Brolin's Jonah Hex. That was a terrible movie, but maybe you could get somebody like him. Or they bring back Chandler Riggs. Obviously, he couldn't be Old Man Carl, but they could still do some kind of story with Chandler Riggs as Carl in an alternate universe where he's the only one left. Maybe they never made it to Alexandria and everybody else died on the road. Or they could go full on Logan and have Carl taking care of old man Rick during his final days. They never met back up with anybody after the governor attacked the prison, and they were wandering the world for years until Rick is no longer able. Really, any of these episodes sound great to me. I'm sure you all have plenty of ideas yourself, so let me know your best idea for an episode about older Carl, and whoever's idea I like best, I'll pin it in the comment section. So the one that I've been the most excited about is Rick Grimes 2000. This isn't an actual photo from the comics, I just asked AI to show me what Rick Grimes would look like as a Terminator. But for those that don't know, because I didn't know this up until pretty recently, there was a short strip of comics called Rick Grimes 2000. It was a non-canon series of The Walking Dead that centered on Rick and the group fighting aliens. Yes, I am serious. The story contains robotic limbs, a giant mechanical Michonne, a horde of zombies formed into one giant zombie, a Lucille that can control the zombies, lightsabers, superhero costumes, and like I said before, aliens. Now, in the comics, this is an alternate timeline after Rick is knocked out by Michonne in Alexandria. He wakes up to a strange future where all of his previous and future foes are there, people who have died and are resurrected, but not in zombie form, and generally this story is just insane. But as a non-canon episode of Tales of the Walking Dead, this could be a ton of fun. This gives the opportunity for so many different characters who have died over the years to resurface, and generally just have a lot of fun with the story and everything that happens in it. There's really no rules when it comes to an episode like this, and I think this could be like the unofficial Walking Dead reunion episode between all the characters that have died over the years. Of course, it would be up to who wants to return, but in the comic, Andrea leads the freedom fighters over the aliens, and seeing Laurie Holden come back for an episode like this could give her character some much needed restoration, and really play out some of the craziest scenarios you can imagine that we would have never gotten otherwise. Alpha and Beta are in this, and they form the giant zombie, and if Andrew Lincoln would return to play Rick in this episode, then he would meet them for the first time. They could even joke about that in the episode. Since Daryl isn't in the comics, he could have a completely ridiculous role like a half-alien being with superpowers. The sky is quite literally the limit for an episode like this, and I think it would be a ton of fun for everybody involved in the making of it, and for the audience to watch. Would an episode like this break the immersion of the other series? Maybe a little bit, but they could even make this episode darker and more serious if they wanted to. And given the fact that this is an actual comic issue, it didn't break that story. It was a fun one-off series to have some fun with this world, and maybe that's what the Walking Dead universe really needs at this time. Tales of the Walking Dead Season 1 was a little disappointing, and my ideas are all over the place, I know. Some of these could add to the universe, and some of them are really out there, but with a series like Tales of the Walking Dead, you can really go anywhere with it. It doesn't impact the story in any meaningful way, which means that there's not a ton of guidelines for what the episodes need to be about. Maybe Tales of the Walking Dead could turn into a sort of unofficial Walking Dead What If series. Or it could be a springboard for an entirely new spin-off series. Or, most likely, it will remain a very small-scale series of individual stories from around this universe. But that's boring. I like my ideas better. What do you guys think of my ideas? Do you think some of these would be cool, or are you glad that I'm not in charge of The Walking Dead? Let me know your own thoughts and what episodes of Tales that you would want to see in the future, whether they be something crazy and out there or something smaller and more in line with the universe right now. Special thanks to my channel members, you guys are the absolute best, and you guys are the first to see this video. So if you want to see videos early like them, become a channel member. You get lots of exclusive perks depending on the tier, so check it out by hitting that join button. Special thanks to these guys right here, and I'll see you all in the next one.
Yeah.